Sara, you've clearly got the code experience in this room. It's pretty impressive. Can you please explain the role that building codes play in the health, safety, and welfare of our society? And can you give any examples of how the building codes have positively affected a community's health and well-being?
I'll be happy to. I'm not a code geek. And just to explain that, I'm not a technical person, but I have a lot of years working with the state and local jurisdictions on adoption of the I-codes and the standards, relevant standards. So I know a little bit about a lot, not a lot about anything in particular. I have selected a few examples to give you on how the codes address health and well-being of people, not just to protect the built environment, but also to look after our welfare as we occupy these buildings. For example, the plumbing code addresses sanitation. It addresses disinfection of potable water to make sure that our water is safe to drink, that the systems are properly installed and maintained. It addresses how plumbing systems in facilities like nursing homes, mortuaries, any building that we go into are installed and properly disposed. Those are basic needs that we take for granted. How many of us think about, well, I'm going into this building, I hope the plumbing system is working. You assume everything is working. The plumbing code also addresses installation of fuel piping systems, gas piping systems, for example. Another example is the property maintenance code. Property maintenance code is probably one that you all should be familiar with. It addresses blight, pest elimination, trash, junk cars, and that's the code that folks use to maintain their properties. You hear about slumlords. Well, those slumlords should be following the procedures in the property maintenance code. Another code that addresses our well-being and welfare is the mechanical code that addresses things like the air conditioning systems. And yesterday we were rather cold in here. Well, you know, the mechanical code addresses those things, and also the level of noise, and those are matters, they matter to us because we work, most of us, inside, and we want to be comfortable and not troubled by a lot of noise, and so the codes address all these issues. Another standard, which is part of the International Building Code, Chapter 11, is the accessibility standard, and that addresses things like ramps and where to place faucets, and the radius for wheelchair turnaround. Those issues are addressed in the accessibility standard. So these are some examples, just a few examples on how the codes address health and well-being, not just the structural provisions that we need to comply with. And as David said, these are basic codes. You know, we set the minimum. This is what society has already agreed is the base acceptable standard for putting up a safe building. And we encourage the states and the local jurisdictions to increase, to go beyond the code, like Florida. Florida is a good example with the high wind provisions. Florida has very stringent provisions. Florida goes beyond what the model code requires, California for seismic and so forth. So these are just a few examples of how the codes address health and well-being.